So, so I go into the lab every day and I study how the brain, which is encased in silence and darkness, how it constructs our reality. And the reason we know that this has something to do with the brain is because if the brain is damaged, even in small ways, your reality changes. And if you take drugs or alcohol or other sorts of things, viruses in the system, your reality can change. So I'm interested in finding where our perspectives overlap in this, because your interest is, one of your interests is also understanding reality, how we perceive it, how it's individualized to us. So can you tell us about that?
There is existence outside, and there is you or me as individual human beings. We have not seen the world. We know it only the way it's projected in the firmament of our minds. When we say mind, in English language, mind is just one word and supposed to encompass everything. But in the yogic terminology, we have 16 parts of the mind which function distinct functions. And there are a whole lot of practices and processes through which one takes charge of these 16 dimensions of mind. These 16, for simpler understanding, can be brought into four sections. The first dimension of the mind is we are referring to as buddhi, or what is generally considered intellect. It is the intellect. I think modern societies, particularly modern education, has become too overly focused on the intellect. Aristotle, you know. I'm not talking about your boy. Because of… we got too engrossed in… we got too mesmerized by our own logic, and we have invested too much in human intellect, leaving out the other dimensions of intelligence that functions within us. When we say intellect, it is the logical realm of what's happening in our minds. Or in other words, in your intellect, you can't make your intellect agree 2 + 2 is 6. It has to be 4, otherwise you'll think it's crazy. So, it's factual, it grasps the facts of life and assimilates and makes an analysis of that and lets us penetrate through the world. Or in other words, intellect is like a knife, the sharper, the better. Knife is an instrument which is used for cutting things open. So this is one way of exploring the world, by dissection. This is how, you know, at least in high school you must have dissected something. Maybe an earthworm or a cockroach or a frog, I don't know how far you went. This is one way of knowing things. You definitely grasp something, but you never grasp the intrinsic nature of life by dissection. So there are other dimensions of intelligence, and another aspect of the intellect is the second dimension of the mind, we call it as ahankara, which in English language would translate as the identity. What is the identity you have taken? Your intellect is always a slave of your identity. What you identified with, it is only around that it functions. Simple things. People are identified with things that they've not even seen, and huge emotions are there, their life is guided by those things. For example, all of us belong to some nation today. There was a time 100 years ago, many people did not belong to any nation. But today everybody belongs to some nation and everybody belongs to some football club also. Because both have flags and emblems and works. So, nationality is a new idea. It's just about 150, 200 years that we have this strong sense of nationhood. We've shifted from our ethnic, racial and other kinds of identities to national identity. Just the moment you believe, I belong to this nation, the emblem of that nation, the flag of that nation, the anthem of that nation, brings genuine emotion. Nobody's pretending, it's real. It's real because people are willing to die for it. It has to be real. But it's just an identity. You could just switch it any time. You could move to another country and take that on and it becomes yours. So the moment you identify yourself with something, your intellect is completely always protecting this identity and working around this identity. So the identity, if we want to continue that analogy, if intellect is the knife, identity is the hand that holds the knife. How steady or unsteady this hand is will determine what this intellect will do or undo. The next dimension of the mind is called as manas. So this is not just in one place, this is the entire body. Manas is a huge silo of memory. So when I say huge silo of memory, whatever memory you may have in your brain, I know you're a brain fan. Whatever memory you may have in your brain, your body has 1 trillion times more memory than that. You definitely don't remember how your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather looked like, but his nose is sitting on your face right now. It remembers. How your forefathers looked 1,000,000 years ago, your body still remembers, has not forgotten. Definitely it is not the capability of your brain. So, in terms of memory, the manas is phenomenal and it's right across the body. Every cell in the body carries enormous memory. Memory to a point for the origin of life on this planet and beyond. All that memory is carried in this body. So this is manas. If there is no memory, intellect would be defunct, it's like a car without gas. Because there is memory, intellect is on. This memory flows through the hand of identity. And whatever is the identity, the memory takes on that color accordingly. And then it plays up in the intellect and intellect functions. The fourth dimension of the mind is called chitta. Chitta means it's pure intelligence, unsullied by memory. There is absolutely no memory, free of memory, it's just pure intelligence. When we say pure intelligence, all kinds of things have been said with all due respect to everybody's beliefs and faiths and whatever. All kinds of things have been said to people that God is generous, God is love, God is this, God is that. Suppose nobody told you anything and you just paid attention to all the creation around you, how a flower blossoms, how a leaf is, how an ant moves. If you paid enough attention, one thing that you would definitely come to is, whatever is the source of creation is a goddamn intelligent thing. Intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. Everything is smacked with phenomenal intelligence beyond what our quite phenomenal brain cannot perceive. So, this is a dimension of intelligence within us, which is the basis of our creation in a way. If you eat a piece of bread, over the afternoon it becomes a human being because this intelligence exists within you and me. So, if you touch this intelligence, in a very mischievous way, the yogi or the yogic culture says, if you touch your chitta, if you touch this dimension of intelligence, then divine becomes your slave. You don't have to think what you want, you don't have to seek what you want. If you touch this intelligence, everything that you wish to know is yours. It's just you have to just direct your focus and it's all there because there is a dimension of chitta. Every human being might have accidentally at some point touched this, which makes suddenly one spark of magic in somebody's life. This is because they've touched this dimension of intelligence unconsciously. Now, the question is only about how to get there consciously and to stay there. So, these aspects of the mind are not entirely located here, it is right across the system.
I kind of think this is the endeavor of science, is to take the intelligence all around us and across our system and try to understand the principles of that. It's a way of going out and trying to understand the blueprints around us in a way that can be made conscious. And we've made lots of progress that way, and we've walked on the moon, and we've cured lots of human suffering that way by viewing this deep intelligence, which I totally agree with you about, as something that we can make understandable, take it from the ineffable to the effable. And that's part of, it's part of what's, maybe the biggest part of what's made our world what it is today.
If I can intervene. When you say understandable, that means we can put it into the parameters of logic. What if there is a dimension of intelligence within you which does not fit into the parameters of logic? Trying to fit everything into the parameters of logic means the surface intelligence, which is the intellect, which is our survival mode. If we don't have an intellect, we wouldn't survive in this world. What is a survival instrument? We are trying to put all dimensions of life through that, and it has to pass through that sieve. That will completely skew the process.
I would want to know that the things that are available to the intellect can't encompass the intelligence of a flower and of a birth and of a body and so on. I take the point that there may be limits to our intellect, but I don't know where those limits are. And I don't know how to guarantee that there are borders there beyond which there's something else.
So science has done incredible things in the last 100 years, no question. Our life is the way it is today. The comfort and convenience that all of us are enjoying is essentially because of the outcome of the scientific endeavor on the planet. There's no question about that. But at the same time, the limitation of science is we are trying to touch a dimension which is beyond physical nature with a physical stick.
Something that you and I had talked about before is this issue of time perception. It's one of the things I study in my lab. And I was mentioning to you that I think it's one of the most stubborn psychological filters we have, by which I mean time seems to be a construction of the brain because we can easily manipulate it in the laboratory so that you think something lasted longer or shorter or something happened in a different order. And there are many physicists like Einstein who were very clear on this point that time doesn't actually exist, but we're trapped inside of it. And so this is an interesting example of using our intellect to sort of come up against a glass wall and say, you know, there seem to be things past this wall, and it's impossible for me to know what it would be like to be free of time, for example.
See, time is a very relative experience. Every human being would know this in some context. On a particular day, if you are very, very joyful, 24 hours passed off like a moment. On another day, you're depressed, 24 hours seems like a eon. They say how long a minute is depends on which side of the bathroom door you are. Somebody says, just 1 minute, wait. So, the basis of time, as I perceive it, you must pardon me because I'm uneducated, okay? The only thing I know, being uneducated is not an easy thing. Yes, because from the first moment you're born, your parents, your teachers, every other adult around you, everybody is busy wanting to teach you something that has not worked in their life. Yes. Everybody's trying to instruct you on something, it doesn't matter what. The only thing that they know better than a just-born infant is they know some survival tricks, the adults. They don't know anything else about life. They have not perceived any life any better than a child. They just know a few survival tricks. They know how to make money, they know how to build this, they know how to do that, but they do not know life in any sense. Because all these other things are just accessories of life, they're not life. Life is something that's throbbing within you. So when we come to time, in the yogic way of seeing things, we just see life as a dance of time and energy. It's a certain amount of time and a certain amount of energy. Actually, in the local languages, the expression for death is very beautiful. We say kalamaitana, that means his time got over. In normal language, when we say somebody passed away, we don't say it as we are saying it in English, we say his time got over. Actually, that's all that happened. somebody's time got over. Now, to put this time and energy together in a proper, weave it together well. If your time gets over when your still energy is vibrant, we say this is an untimely death. If your energy gets over when your still time is on, it's a vegetative life. To the art of putting this time and energy together so that both of them play together, dance together well, is a successful life. So when we say time, there are many things we can do with energy, but as far as time is concerned, it's ticking off for all of us at the same pace, in that sense. I know there's research, I'll come to that. It doesn't matter what we say, but our time is ticking off at the same time. We may think many things, we came to this talk, we went to the cinema, we went to the university, we went here and there, but as far as physical body is concerned, it's going straight to the grave. Because it is keeping time. You may forget, you're happy, you forgot that you're 65 or 70, you felt like you were 18 because today you're joyful. But your body is keeping time. Your brain can be easily fooled. But body is properly keeping time, never you can fool this body, all the time keeping time. Because time is a consequence, time is not a factor by itself. Time is a consequence of cyclical movements in the physical reality. We know time. If the earth spins once, we say it's a day. If the moon goes around us, we say it's a month. If the earth goes around the sun, we say it's a year. Our idea of time has come essentially because of the cyclical movements of everything that's physical around us. This is the nature of physicality. Physicality is essentially cyclical, whether it's atomic or cosmic, everything is cyclical. The moment you're identified with physical nature, time is a big factor. If you dissociate yourself with your physical nature, if you sit here and if you have a little space between you and your physical body, because what you call as my body is an accumulated process. It is something that you accumulated, it's just a piece of the planet. If a little space comes between you and your body, suddenly time is not a factor. To such an extent, we have any number of people, this may be very difficult for a Western audience to digest, but I have seen yogis who have not moved from the place they were sitting for over 6 months, 7 months, just in the same place. By any normal standards, your body should not survive that. But once they sit down, they won't move, just like that, not moving at all. Because once you distance yourself from your physiological process, time is not a factor. Right now you're sitting here, it's not your watch which is keeping the time, it's your body. If I make you sit here for 3 hours, your body says it's enough. But suppose you did not have a body, we are going to sit here for 3,000 years, what's the problem? So essentially, because of your rooting in your physical platform, which you call as the body, which you built over a period of time, from the accumulations that you gathered from this planet, that is the basis of experience of time. If you distance yourself from that, there is no consequence of time on you.
What is the you that can be separated from the physical?
Is it a fact that you gathered your body over a period of time?
It's a fact that this body gathered together over a period of time, and it may be that I emerge as a consequence of that, this feeling of I, as opposed to me doing the gathering.
Tell me, you've been having lunch and dinner, or…
Have I been having lunch and dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah, this dynamic accumulation has been eating plenty, yeah.
So what you refer to as my body right now is an accumulation of food. It's a heap of food. Not a pleasant way to describe you, but it is. What you call as my mind, largely in people's experience, is an accumulation of impressions over a period of time.
Agreed.
So, if you have to gather this much of impressions and this much of body, something more fundamental must be there, isn't it?
Houston, Texas is an accumulation of roadways and buildings, but we wouldn't say that Houston was there and then gathered.
You are not a piece of geography. You're not a piece of geography, are you? You're
Well,
alive.
it may be exactly that, a physical being. I'll tell you why, from my perspective, that seems like a possibility. It's because we're across the street from the world's largest medical center, and every day there are thousands of people there whose geography is changing because of Alzheimer's or stroke or tumor or traumatic brain injury, and who they are changes. It doesn't seem like there's something fundamental that outlasts damage to the tissue.
See, you're talking about thought and emotion. The biggest mistake we have made is we have given too much significance to human thought. Whatever you think is only happening from the limited data that you have gathered, yes or no?
Agreed.
Yes. So the data that you and me have gathered, however big we may think it is, in terms of the cosmos, it's minuscule, it's nothing. It's really not of any consequence. So from this minuscule of data that we have gathered, we are generating some thought which could be useful in making our lives, it could be useful in creating a few things, it could be useful fundamentally for our survival and to enhancement of our survival process, all this. But it doesn't give you access to life. Thought and emotion is psychological drama that's happening within you. You can conduct it any way you want. You're talking about somebody had a tumor or Alzheimer's or an accident or something and the drama went wrong. The drama can go wrong even without any of those ailments. You ask people. People's drama goes wrong without any accident or injury or ailment, just like that, drama goes wrong on a daily basis for a lot of people.
We usually give that a name, though, something like depression or a psychotic break. Or something.
That's a business.
Not one I'm making any money on.
I'm saying there's only this much. Either your faculties are taking instructions from you or they have become compulsive for some reason, all right? Either your body and mind, you can conduct it consciously or it's become compulsive. That's all that's happening. Whether you call it physical ailment or mental ailment, all that's happened is just this, that your fundamental faculties of existence on this planet is your body and your mind. These two things, you have lost grip over them. So it can become this kind of ailment or that kind of ailment or whatever, but fundamentally you have lost charge. That's all that's happened. If your body and your brain took instructions from you, would you create depression? Would you create illness? Would you create anything? You would create highest level of pleasantness for you, isn't it?
We certainly would if there were a separate you that could gain that control.
See, we can come to this like this. There is something called… because I see that you keep referring my brain. If you say my brain, that means it's yours. What is yours can't be you, right?
It's a colloquialism that we use because I need to refer to this one in here. I need to specify which brain I'm talking about.
See, when I say my hand, I know even without my hand, I can still exist. Similarly, if certain parts of the brain are gone, our ability to think and feel the way we were doing it earlier may be gone, but still, that person is not gone.
That's the question. So if I lose a little part of my finger, I'm still me, but if I lose a chunk of brain tissue that same size, I can be someone completely different. I can
No,
lose…
you're talking about personality. Personality is again an acquired thing.
Beyond personality, I can lose memory, I can lose consciousness, of course, I can lose the ability to perceive reality the way that we do now. I might become colorblind because of a lesion, because of damage to a particular part of my brain. I lose the ability to understand what objects are.
Okay, let's come to this. See, suppose somebody became colorblind because of an injury or whatever that happened to them, unfortunately. That person still knows, I have become colorblind, isn't it? He's still there.
It's true for the person who becomes colorblind, but it's not true for example, a person who is born colorblind. They don't even have a concept that they could be They don't have a concept of color. So let's take a person who's born blind entirely. They don't even have a concept of vision. So who's the you for them? Do they?
See, even a person who has visually impaired, who's never seen the world around, he still exists within himself. He's as much a man or a woman as anybody else can be. It's just that if all of us were blind, we would be quite a fine society without eyes.
Quite right.
Yes, isn't it? Only because somebody has and I don't have. In comparison, I have a problem. Otherwise, if none of us had eyes, you think we wouldn't have found our way around? We would have. Maybe not the same way, in a different way.
Oh, I totally agree, because in so many dimensions…
There are mammals who are flying by, sound.
Yeah. Well, there are so many dimensions that we are blind to now. So what we call visible light is just a 1/10 trillionth of the electromagnetic spectrum that's out there. We only detect a little bit. In some branches of physics, it seems there might be between 10 to 13 spatial dimensions, not just these three, and yet we're trapped in these.
We are moving away from consciousness to perception.
But my point is, we're already blind to most of the world. So I agree with you that, okay, so let's move back to perception.
See, what an individual life is, you cannot disagree that you're life, are you? You're a piece of life, I'm a piece of life, everybody is. What kind of personalities we have acquired, what kind of likes and dislikes we have acquired, what kinds of gods and demons we have acquired, what kinds of other things we've acquired is a social process that's happened to us, cultural and social process. If you were born in a different part of the world, it would be entirely different. Depending upon what we are exposed to, these are impressions that we have taken in, phenomenal amount of impressions. Leaving that aside, let's look at one fundamental. Whatever you gather, you can only claim it's mine. You cannot say it's me, isn't it? Whatever you gather.
How do you mean? You mean your body? You say
anything. I can say, this is my chair. If I sit here every day and then I say, this is me, then there's a problem.
I think there's a possibility that it's exactly what happens, that the stuff that this piece of life can end up controlling becomes me. The reason I think of this as my hand is because it's most of the time is under the control.
My hand is okay, no problem. My hand is okay, me is the problem.
What did you say, me?
My hand means it belongs to you, no problem with that. When it becomes me, then it leads to a completely distortion of perception.
Okay, I think… So you're talking about identity, what you identify yourself as?
See, the nature of the mind is such, it is looking for because human intellect and human intelligence has broken out of a certain bond which was there for every other creature, that they could function like an automated machine through certain instinctual process. What has happened with the human being with the process of evolution is, the human being has broken out of that instinctual process, and there is an intelligence which has to function consciously. But functioning consciously means every moment of life is an exploration, which is too scary for a whole lot of people. So the best thing is identify with something which gives you some sense of what you are. But this some sense of what you are, which you took on based on your social and cultural backgrounds, what you took on, makes sense for your survival process, but not for explorative process. It doesn't explore life, it keeps you sane. It's a good solace, it helps you to sleep well in the night, but it doesn't awaken a different dimension of knowing, it doesn't awaken the possibility of exploring dimensions which are not yet within you. So if this has to happen, the most important thing is to be able to sit here not identified with anything. When I said, it's so hard to remain uneducated in this world, because everybody's busy wanting to teach you something. This is all I did in my life, to remain uneducated, not to be influenced by parents, by family, by religion that's happening around you, culture that's happening around you, education that people are forcing on you, just to be the way creation intended you to be, simply. See, I may not fit into the university milieu, but I'm okay, you know. Just simply the way you were born. Not tangling up your intelligence to any particular thing, either your nationality or your religion or your race or your creed or your family or any kind of identity or your gender or whatever, simply to be able to view your life just as a piece of life. If one does this, then you will see perception will explode in ways that they have not imagined possible.
Now, as a physical body, you're unable to not be influenced by the clothing of your culture, by…
No, this is a statement, this is not a compulsive thing.
But you don't dress as somebody who's Chinese or an Eskimo or something.
When I'm in the North Pole, I will, I think.
So you can't help… So from my perspective, there's this issue of brain plasticity, which is to say that we absorb what's coming in. And I think it's exactly consistent with your description about who you are in the end is an accumulation of all these perceptions. There's also the case that we come to the table with some pre-programming in our DNA, which I think is consistent with what you're talking about, is the memory of all of your ancestors leading up to this point. But because we are creatures that go around and vacuum in our cultures, and we speak this particular language, and we are males, and we dress in certain ways, it's hard to avoid that. Now, I'm guessing you're going to say, but you don't identify with it. Is that right?
See, what is a social requirement is one thing. I just saw you going into the women's room.
And you too, by the way.
Because that was the only bathroom available.
Yes.
So, by social norm, you do certain things. Because in the room that we were sitting, there was only women's room. I don't know why they marked it like that.
I don't know.
So you went in, I went in, every other male went in, only the female did not go. So now what you do for the norm that exists so that you don't collide into situations is one thing. What you identify with is another thing. So the moment you identify with anything for that matter, starting from your body to everything else, what is your body is the limited body, what you call as family is a larger body, what you call as community is a much bigger body, what you call as a nation is a much bigger body, what you call as humanity is a much bigger body. This is how human identities go. People think it's better to be identified with a nation than to be with an individual when there is a war or when there's some situation. People think it's better to be identified with the whole humanity, but any identity limits you. It takes away the fundamental possibility of what this life is. Identity is required for survival process to manage day-to-day situations, but it is not an exploratory process. Because the intention of science is to know. See, technology is a fallout. Unfortunately, in this world, nobody would fund science if it did not spin technology, which is a very unfortunate thing. Because human intelligence wants to know, it need not be useful, it simply wants to know. So technology is useful, and what is useful today, tomorrow you may realize is very destructive, it may take away our life. So technology has to be judiciously looked at, what to apply, what we should not apply, but that judiciousness is gone because everything is commercialized and it's on, full force. Everything that we do after 50 years, we come back and say we did the wrong thing, now we're doing the right thing, and again after 25 years we come back and say then we did the wrong thing, now we're doing the right thing. Every stage of life we seem to know it perfectly well, but after some time looking back we know we did not know nothing, we missed too many pieces. So technology is something that we have to judiciously do. Science must happen rampantly. Mysticism must happen rampantly because this is simply exploratory. This is not about seeing how to make it useful. But today, modern science has become a slave of technology. If you don't make it useful, nobody's going to fund you anymore. If you simply say, I want to know, nobody's interested in this. How can it be turned into an enterprise? That's all they're interested in. This is a wrong way to approach science, because science is a fundamental need within a human being wanting to know. It's the nature of human intelligence. It is not something that somebody made up. It's not a bunch of scientists who made this up. This is a fundamental need within human intelligence wanting to know. It is the nature of a human being, if he sees something new, he wants to know what this is, whether it's a small thing or a big thing. So to continuously sustain that wonder, that sense of wanting to know, is the basis of science and mysticism. It is only the fundamental approach is different in the sense, science is trying to achieve everything through physical means, by taking physical quantities, going by the physical laws. But physical is like the peel of the fruit, it has no purpose of its own. The peel is useful only as a protective layer to the fruit. Once the fruit is eaten, peel goes to the trash can. See, right now, the fruit is inside, so this body is very important. We have to feed it, we have to decorate it, we have to dress it up, we have to pamper it in so many ways. Tomorrow morning, if the fruit is gone, nobody is interested in this body anymore. Nobody wants to transact with this anymore. Only because there is something else inside, body is such great significance. Once this is gone, what is this? This is just like a fruit peel. People want to get rid of it at the earliest. At least in America, they dress it up. In India, within 4 hours, you must get rid of the body. That's the rule. Because once it's dead, leave the dead to the dead, somebody said long time ago. Once, as long as they're alive, you do whatever. Once they're dead, you're done. Because the peel is meaningless without the fruit. Right now, the fundamental flaw in this approach is, though it's produced phenomenal results in terms of well-being for us, comfort for us, convenience for us, the kind of comfort and convenience we're enjoying, no other generation ever has known on this planet. This is a fruit of science or technology, rather. In spite of that, will it lead to human well-being? That's a question mark. Comfort and convenience will come, but will well-being come? That's a question mark, because if you look back on the humanity, let's say 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, how people were and how people are you today, are you more joyful than them? Are you more blissed out than them? So, are you more blissed out than previous generations? It's not true. We are in much more comfort, but we are not in much more joyful states or pleasant states within ourselves. Or in essence, our well-being or the fundamental quality of our life has not changed, though the physical quality of our life has changed like unimaginable proportions in the last 50 years. So, we are trying to approach everything through physical means. If you go through physical means, you will hit that glass wall somewhere. I think, in my perception, I'm not a scientist, I don't know all of it, but in my perception, I think the physicists are near the glass wall. They might not have hit it, they're near.
That's the unknown question, right? We have no guarantee how far we'll get in science. And we may run, by glass wall, I assume you mean we run to a place where we say we can't go further.
Where the present faculties will not be good enough. Present faculties of 5 senses and a brain will not be good enough.
That we hit a long time ago. So for example, things like quantum physics, you can't understand it, but you can write it down in equations that make predictions accurate out to 14 decimal places. So we think it's pretty good, and we can build new things out of it, that we can see things much smaller and much farther away than we ever could before. We understand the wondrousness and the subtleness of everything around us much better than we did before. But the actual physics, a human can't understand. We just make tools to get where we need to go with it. So we've already hit that point. And certainly it's the case with the human brain, which is made up of almost 100 billion specialized cells with thousands of trillions of connections between them, and every second…
I like the way you're saying it with the passion. Like some people are talking about food or something else.
I'm a brainy instead of a
You
foodie.
feed on the brain.
Yeah. But the reason it's easy to be passionate about it is because it's a system of such unimaginable complexity that it bankrupts the language. We have no way that a human could perceive a system of that complexity, and yet each of us has it. There's this 3-pound organ that we're carrying around, but we've already hit that point a long time ago in science where we realize we can make new strains of mathematics, we can make computer simulations, but we'll never get it. I'll never get the brain. All I can do is take the way that you explained the 16 aspects of the mind, you simplified it down to 4. The best I can do is take the thousands of trillions of connections in the brain and make some cartoony model that my impoverished intellect can sort of get a sense of.
They're building a simulator, brain simulator,
Yeah.
Andrew Markram is busy building this simulated brain. All that is fine. We are looking at the physical mechanics of what's happening. The complexity of what's happening is beyond the physical mechanics. See, looking at the physical mechanics of the brain, the neuronal function and the electric… this thing that's happening, the waves that are flowing, whatever things happening, is fantastic because of the complexity of what it is, the sophistication of what it is. It is the gadget, no question, okay? This human gadget is the gadget on the planet. Of what we have seen, this is the most sophisticated gadget on the planet, there's no question about that. Keeping that aside, but even this brain can be manufactured with something as simple as a piece of a carrot or a bread. So I'm saying, there is an intelligence here which can create a brain. Why are you ignoring that intelligence?
I think that's the heart of science, is to try to understand what that is. What I mean by that is, so we have different approaches in science to get there, but studying the genetic code and understanding how the heck with 27,000 genes can you unpack a human being? Because whatever the truth is of what's happening spiritually, if there's a separate you or not, what we know for sure is that you can unpack a human being from these 4 letters of amino acids, and these base pairs that make these proteins, and somehow that all gets unpacked, fueled by bread and carrots and so on.
These kind of questions have always been on human mind. It happened almost 15,000 years ago. Adi Yogi, that means the first yogi, he had 7 disciples. These 7 disciples are full of questions. Some of them are astronomers, some of them are serious mathematicians, things like this. They have 1,000,000 questions. After some time, Adi Yogi is bored with their questions because whatever they ask, it's just a product of their intellect. They're not able to ask a question beyond that. So they ask, what is the nature of this, your cosmos? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How big is it? He's just bored. So he says, your cosmos, I can pack it into your mustard seed. The entire cosmos, I can pack it into your mustard seed, he said. Then they were flabbergasted by this. Then they said, what is it made of? If you can pack such a huge cosmos, which we can't even imagine where it begins and where it ends into your mustard seed, what is it made of? He was completely bored, even not to utter a word, he simply said like this. 5 elements. Just these 5 elements. The entire universe is a play of these 5 elements. If you master the 5 elements, you have a key to every aspect of creation. If you don't master the 5 elements, if you approach it from outside, as you approach it, it will take on 1 trillion new forms. As you try to study it, it can take on 1 trillion new forms as you're looking at it, because that is what it is capable of. Just 5 things. 5 million things would be difficult. 5, I'm sure you and me can study, isn't it? At least I'm capable of 5. You're talking